Okay, welcome everybody. We're excited to have everybody here for our Free Friday webinar. We have, and you'll have to excuse me, we have so many wonderful attendees. We have a large group, so I'm letting people in as we're getting started. I'm excited to welcome Mounika Ragula to our presentation. Before we do that, I just wanted to, before I do her introduction, oh, not seeing the slides. Okay, give me just a moment. Let me, one moment here, stop sharing. Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay, perfect. Monique will be sharing with us today about PDF accessibility. We're also very excited about our other webinars that we have coming up, and you're also able to view these on our YouTube channel. So please go out there and check out that catalog as well. We have most recently our last Free Friday webinar was from Dr. Emily Thompson on future-proofing your online course. So take a look at those. Upcoming, we have a next webinar in our series from Dr. Stacy Greathouse talking about meaningful introductions in the online classroom. So also check that out as well. We are excited that we have our upcoming annual conference that'll be hosted June 23rd through the 26th in St. Louis, Missouri. We hope that you're able to join us for that down in St. Louis. You can still register. In fact, and I'll drop this in a chat once we get started, we'll have a discount code for new registrations. So if you haven't registered yet, I will drop that, and we hope that you can sign up. It's a wonderful event, great sessions, workshops that are all included. So all the workshops that would cost just as much as your conference registration, those are all included with your conference registration. We're also excited that we have a virtual component to that, which Monique will be one of those presenters as well. And we couldn't do any of this without our wonderful, wonderful sponsors. So I want to give out a shout out to all of these sponsors who make, what we do possible. So hopefully you're seeing some folks that you're familiar with. And if you're not, please check them out. Particularly, I'd encourage you to check out our Smart Brief that goes out once a week. Lots of great resources there, and you can sign up for our newsletter as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to, I'm going to stop sharing here, hand it over to Monique. One quick housekeeping item is that if you have any excuse me, if you have any technical questions, please send that to me in the chat. You can send it to me directly or just drop that in the chat. Otherwise, you can add your questions to the chat, but we're going to hold questions until the end. We'll have some time for that. So with that, I will hand it over to Monique. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tiffany. I am sharing my screens with you. All right. A heads up about whether you can see the screen would be really helpful. Anybody? Thumbs up or?
That looks great.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you. So, thank you so much for all of you for joining this afternoon on a Friday to talk about this important topic that's digital accessibility. And I am glad that I'm able to do this. So let's get started because we have a lot to cover today. So again, we are going to take a look at PDF accessibility, not just in distance learning, but anywhere. Because if we design with accessibility in mind, it helps all the students, whether they are asynchronous, synchronous, or in class or hybrid with us. So I will be sharing some of the strategies that have worked for us here at our institution. So I will talk about some of our strategies. So what are some learning objectives? What can you expect for today is we will take a look at identifying the impact that inaccessible learning materials can cause to our students. And then next, we move on to some strategies for creating accessible PDFs, and I will also focus a little bit about some proactive and reactive approaches, which would include starting from Word documents, like any word processing software that we might be using to create these documents. So those will be the topics that we will be focusing on today. So a little bit about me. I am Mounika Ragula. I work at Moyne College as an instructional technology designer. I work mainly with faculty members about their instructional design needs, technology needs. Half of my work now focuses on digital accessibility, making sure that our course content is accessible, predominantly focusing on the fact that they are accessible with a screen reader, because we have students who use screen readers on our campus. And I provide faculty support on inclusive design and digital accessibility as well. A little bit about my educational background. I have a PhD in curriculum instruction and media technology from Indiana State University and a master's in electronics and computer engineering technology. So that's my brief background. So again, what the topics that we will be focusing on specifically today is why is digital accessibility important, why we should be thinking about it, and then importance, again, like our objectives I mentioned in the previous slide. What is the importance of accessible instructional materials and what kinds of barriers inaccessible materials would create for students? And then some strategies that we use here at our college to create accessible materials, as well as how we remediate documents and what tools and technologies that we use. That's what we will be talking about today. And I do have 3 activities for all of you. One is just your opinions about inaccessible materials, which you can access via QR code or entering the link on your website or on your desktops if you're using a desktop. And then 2 more activities that you can follow along with me if you can. That would require you to download some of the documents that I have for you, or if you have any existing documents that you'd like to uh, test on or take a test ride on, please feel free to use those as well. But if you don't have anything handy right now, I have them for you to download. So that's what we will be covering today. All right, so let's jump right in. Why is digital accessibility important? I know I have a quote from Title II of ADA, but to roughly give you a brief idea is, making sure that all of our students, not just students, anybody on our college campuses are able to access information provided to them digitally, is accessible regardless of their abilities, and they should be able to access the information quickly, easily, independently, privately, and equally, just like all of us do, the rest of us do. Most of the content right now is available in digital environments, so we need to be able to make sure that our content is equally accessible to everybody. So on the left, you're seeing some of the words that are associated with digital accessibility, and why we need to comply with that is that, putting legal compliance aside, it adds more value in terms of making sure that our content is inclusive, that our students feel like they belong, and providing equal access, giving that independence to users regardless of their abilities. And they should be able to access all this information privately with uh, any time without having to depend on working hours only, and then easily too. So that's where we focus on. That's where all the digital accessibility focus goes to. And one thing that we believe in our team is that if we design documents or anything that are accessible, that means that we are helping all the students, not just disabled students. So that's what we believe in. And so here is the first activity for you. So impact of inaccessible instructional materials. When I say inaccessible, think of them as um, documents that are scanned, or documents that are not, that are written in a very small font, or color contrast is less, that people who have low vision cannot see. So think of those as inaccessible instructional materials. So the next slide, it will open up as a Slido slide where you can add your input. So the question will be on the Slido as well. So the question is, in your opinion, how do inaccessible learning materials impact student learning, especially in distance learning? So please go ahead, and if you're using a mobile device, on the left is the QR code. You can scan it to enter your answers via mobile device. Or if you're using a desktop like I am, you could use slido.com and enter the code to be able to join on this, and then start adding your responses. So let's take about a minute or so to go ahead and start participating. I look forward to seeing how inaccessible materials are impacting in your experience. Yeah, unfairly limits learning. Yes, it may make learning impossible in some situations. Definitely. Yes, decrease student engagement, slow down learning. Yes, decreases confidence in subject matter and coursework. Frustration can make students want to give up altogether. Yeah, we see this all the time. Students may be frustrated, less motivated. Frustration seems to be our, yeah, thank you. Thank you for all the wonderful, wonderful responses. Definitely. Equity. Yes, students might lose motivation. I used to be one of those students. Yeah, affects sense of belonging, no learning, prevent students from obtaining degree certificates. Yes. Retention could be a problem. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Inability to learn. Yes. Sends a message that students are less valued. That's a great one. Yeah. This is great. Yeah. Keep the answers coming. These are great, great, great. Thank you. Awesome. Detrimental to campus culture. If inclusive culture is part of our strategic plan, mission, vision statements, then yes, we are definitely not not doing that. Keeping up that promise, yep, definitely impacts career options. Poor modeling for when they become workforce themselves. Yeah, these are great. Thank you so much for participation. Here is what I added myself as well. Like, how would inaccessible instructional materials impact? It definitely impacts the students' ability to access the materials at any time they want, especially because they are at a distance. Most of the distance learning happens asynchronously, right? So that access is absolutely important. And if it impacts them, then what's the point, right? And then it does create barriers in accessing learning materials on time, and they lose the feeling of belonging, and it causes isolation. This is a big one for me, because especially because you're at a distance, you already feel like you are alone, you're isolated. With lack of access to materials, it will become even more exaggerated. And then as some of you have mentioned, students might lose motivation. That results in retention issues for higher ed institutions. So great points. Thank you. Okay, so on the flip side, let's focus on the positive side of things. If we create accessible instructional materials, how do they help our students, right? It does create a student support environment that is ready to help them. Like, everybody can learn and practice equally. And then instructional materials, I would say proactive planning is much more important. Yes, reactive measures have to be taken, but proactively, if it goes into the planning process, that makes it, that makes it practice for everybody who is involved in creating this. And then it creates an inclusive culture, and students get the sense of belonging, and provides equal access. Just like we have looked at why digital accessibility is important. I just thought I'd reiterate some of these points. Okay. Sometimes when we talk about accessibility, we hear this question about, well, my course is available, like, it's published, students should be able to access the content. So that's where that confusion we hear sometimes is that, sometimes the word accessibility itself is taken as there is a misconception around that word. Like, providing access to students is not always the same of meeting the accessibility standard. So that's why we thought I would clarify this word right at the beginning is providing equal access to course content at the same time as all the students, regardless of their ability. So this is covered under federal ADA law, Americans with a disability, and also Section 504 and 508 under human and Health and Human Services. Um, Again, like clarifying, demystifying here, the word accessibility and availability is that sometimes just because we are making a course available to students doesn't mean it is accessible to them. So these are not synonymous. So that's one thing that we constantly encounter. So I thought I would add this here as well. I don't know if any of your institutions face this problem where they have this misconception that if the course is published and the content is published, that means that it is accessible. Um, and also, it is not about making the content accessible at a much later date, like after we receive accommodation request, then doing the work to make sure that the content is accessible. It should be accessible from the start. That should be the goal. So moving on from here. So let's talk a little bit about creating accessible documents. So some of the proactive strategies that I thought I would talk about here is that when we think of document creation, anything, doesn't matter where we are, whether we are talking documents or whether we are doing some other project, if accessibility is considered in the planning process itself, it makes it a little bit easier to build content by keeping the accessibility standards in mind rather than fixing them later. Because obviously, uh, if we are planning accessibility standards during development, it's easier because we are making all the work that we need to do at the beginning instead of going back to the documents and fixing them later. So that obviously takes more time than during the creation process. So that's where we call you know keeping accessibility standards while creating documents saves time tremendously in the future when, suppose, let's say we have a accommodation request and then we need to hurry to remediate all our documents to meet the accessibility standards. So document creation is the best step to start thinking about accessibility. And then since we are all in higher ed space, I would also say course development is another stage, right? Doesn't matter what learning management system we use, we might have places where we can create content using pages or announcements or assignments. So if these same accessibility standards that we use to create documents are also followed while creating the course content in the learning management systems that we have, that also becomes a proactive strategy and will later on save some time when we already have considered accessibility standards while building. And then this is another thing that we tell our faculty, like when we are, um, developing a course for next semester, and if you're planning on using the same content or most of the content from previous semesters, think about a proactive strategy there also. So you have an option here. One big issue that we notice here is faculty like to keep all the content, whether they use it or not. So I'll give you one example. So we have some faculty who has like all their syllabi from 2014, 2 times a semester, all the syllabi from the past 11 years just sit in their course. So that basically brings the accessibility of their course down. So no matter how much convincing we try to do, like you can always access them by going back to the previous course. They're like, no, what if I need it at any time? So that is one thing that we try to tell faculty member. If bring only, like whenever you're course importing or course copying, I don't, language depends based on the learning management software you're using. But when you're copying course from your previous semester to the new semester, Make sure that you're bringing only the content that you're planning to use. Leave things behind if you don't plan on using them. And even if you realize later on in the semester that, oh, I would need that document, you can always go back and bring it rather than having to clean the new course. So that's what we tell faculty members here too, like, make the decision about which ones you want to keep and then create your new course so it's much more cleaner rather than filled with a lot of clutter. And then another thing is instructional material creation. It could be content that is created in your in a course's uh, tools available in learning management system. Like we use Canvas here at Moyne, and we have pages, we have announcements, we have assignments that faculty can use to create instructional materials. But apart from those, but sometimes we create videos for students. How are we thinking about accessibility of those? Like, does it have closed captions? Does it have a transcript available in case students need them? Or if we are using images, do all images have alternative text? So thinking about these accessibility standards right from the beginning, right, during the planning and creation process, makes it easier later on, is what my goal here is to convey by talking about proactive design strategies. So let's talk about document creation itself, right? When we are not just documents, these pillars apply not just to document creation, but whenever we are creating instructional materials anywhere, even on the in our LMSs, we usually work with a text editor or a rich content editor where we, produce, develop content, right? These pillars apply to those as well. So although I said document accessibility here, this can be applied in web content creation as well. So some of the things that we need to focus are headings. Are your headings properly labeled and properly structured so that if a screen reader is going through that document or that page, is a screen reader able to distinguish between what is a heading versus what's a paragraph? What's the correct type of heading versus what's a list item? So those things. So properly tagging your headings and lists and paragraphs, etc. So with one thing I would say here about documents that we create on Word, for example, we don't have to worry about a paragraph as indicating a paragraph as a paragraph, but with headings, we do have to pay attention to those. So I will talk about that right after this slide. But the next thing to focus on is, are our images properly tagged for alternative text? Meaning, is a image that is in that content adding context to that content, or is it just there for decorative purposes? So those decisions. And then links, whenever we are using links, which we are digital world, we live in a digital world, and we would like to provide extra resources to our students. So instead of adding click here or go here or um, for more information, instead of using generic terms like that, using descriptive links helps, especially if a student or anybody navigating through a website, get an idea of what is behind the link, especially for a screen reader. If we just say click here, it will just take the people there, and the people who are using screen reader, they would not know what's the purpose of that link. And then another reason for descriptive links is that we can decide, right? As a user, as a receiver of this information, they can decide whether they want to visit that link at that point or not. If we just keep it as a click here, it's so generic that we might not always, it's like, I don't know what I'm getting myself into here, but I don't know how much time I have. So, especially adult learners, we want to know how much time I will be spending on that information. And another thing to think of here whenever we are using descriptive links is that, some of the documents have like this huge link with bunch of gibberish in the URL for security purposes that are encrypted. So those actually are really long and occupy a lot of space. If a screen reader is going through that, it will read everything letter by letter. Doesn't make sense. Not good. in terms of accessibility and usability. So in those scenarios as well, make sure that that huge link with encrypted messaging or encrypted words in there are hidden behind a descriptive word that explains exactly what that link is, what is the destination of that link. So that's about the descriptive links here. And then color contrast is another thing. It's for, think of people with low vision or color blindness, right? So if they have issues like visual, like that vision impairment, color contrast comes into picture. It can severely impact somebody's ability to read the content properly. So we always need to focus on color contrast as well. If you need information about color contrast or what is good amount of color contrast, my to go always is like, is there like 100% contrast? Like if there is a white background, then black would be your 100% contrast. And if it's a black background, then white is 100% contrast. Does that mean that you should not use any colors? No, you can, we need colors in our life, right? So we can always, there are a lot of resources, especially on W3C consortium. They give us like this contrast ratio that we can follow, and you can always Google this to find out is this contrast working and meeting the needs of WCAG standards, which is the Web Content Accessibility Guideline standards. There are always resources that we can refer to make sure that contrast is good. And then lists when properly created also guide people to follow the content like we are intending them to follow. If we manually create the list, then most of the time it's not listed properly. So it might run into accessibility issues as well, which I have an example to show you for that. And then tables are another thing that cause a lot of trouble if not properly labeled or does not have proper headers. So this is one thing that we run into, especially with scanned PDFs. So these are some of the pillars that help accessibility tremendously. If we keep these things when we are developing our content, 90% of our struggle is taken care of while creation process. Also, I will also bring the same pillars topic in the remediation as well, because basically these are the 6 topics that also guide our remediation steps as well. So something to remember here. Okay. Alternative text, alternative descriptions for images is another time-taking topic. I will be very brief here because we have a few activities to look at. So sometimes image descriptions, we question like, what is appropriate? What is good for a image description so that students who are using screen readers can benefit from it? Sometimes then it comes to the point of, if you are an instructional designer, instructional technologist like me, we are not always the subject matter experts in making these decisions. So we might have to refer back to the faculty if we are in faculty support. So then we can walk our faculty through these kinds of questions like, is this image adding uh, importance to the context, or is it just there for decorative purposes? If so, indicate it as decorative, so a screen reader will completely skip over it. And then go to the basic. So if it's just if it's a famous cycle that everybody in that subject matter should know about, then just give it the title. Or if it's somewhat requiring a short narrative, then give a little narrative. One thing that we usually get here is people tend to write a picture of, an image of, and describe the image. We don't need to technically do that, because when a screen reader goes through this, it already adds the image word in front of whatever alternative description we are using. So you can jump right into the description of that specific picture. And then sometimes we do need literal descriptions given the need. If this, I found out recently that if the rest of the content is describing what's in the image, then we might get away with um, uh, a shorter description. But if the rest of the content does not describe the content of the image, then we might have to sometimes write literal descriptions. So this is one thing that we often struggle with when we are working with faculty members, like helping them make a decision about when they need to write literal description versus when a short description was be enough. And here I have a resource for you. This is from W3 organization. The organization that comes up with these standards is that how to make a decision about alt text, when you need to write alt text, and how you can write that alt text. So I believe the link will be shared with you in the chat. So again, alternative descriptions could take its own half an hour, but I don't want to spend that much time here. But I thought I would make this a separate topic so that I could talk briefly about how we go about educating about alternative descriptions. And then let's try to create a Word document and see how to test accessibility and while creating. So if you already have a Word document ready, then please go ahead and use it. If not, you can use the bit.ly here, the bit.ly link, to download a generic document that I created for you to play along with me or to work along with me. So one thing that I would like to highlight here is this note. So accessibility checker results depend on the version of the word processing software you have on your computer. So sometimes it's not accurate. So my alternative is to use Microsoft 365 if you are in education domain, like if you have a .edu email, that's that's a free account that you can create with them. And because it's cloud-based, most of the standards will be most up-to-date, most recent. But with us at our institution, we have an accessibility checker installed within our learning management system called Ally. Probably you're familiar with it. So through that is how we get all of our accessibility issues. And then we take those issues and remediate the documents later. But if you don't have the accessibility checker availability or it's not available at your institutions, then my alternative recommendation is Microsoft 365 to test the accessibility of your Word documents. If you have any questions about Ally or Microsoft 365, you could definitely ask me at the end. If I can't answer, in this time frame that we have, my email will also be pasted or is in the Q&A slide. You can reach out to me anytime. Okay, now let's go ahead and let me stop share real quick so that I can I can share this document with you. Give me just a second. Okay, all right. Yeah, you can please go ahead and download this document so we can work on the accessibility of it as on our Word documents on our computer. So if you are following along on a phone, I'm sorry to say this, but I don't see how that can happen unless you have Word installed on your computer. So I'm going to go ahead and download this as a Word document and go from there. I might need to reshare my screen. All right. It is not downloading. Okay, I'm getting an error. Let me see. All right. Sorry, Zoom security here. Okay. Now that we are here, I created this lorem ipsum document, which I can't read this. I just wanted to show you some of the things that we train on. Okay, as you can clearly see, I just put bunch of words here without following any kind of headings or anything here. So one thing that we usually get from our faculty is, how do I designate something as a heading? So our regular practice is that some of us, we just select this, increase the font size, and make it bolder, and make it center. To our eyes, it is a heading, right? But to a screen reader, it's not. It's just a random text to it. So it will just read it as a text. So our how we can make sure that a heading is designated as a heading, these pre-designed styles that come with our word are there for that exact reason. So if we indicate that as a heading, it will be tagged as a heading. So even if we convert this document into a PDF, that tag of heading will remain, and then we will have met the headings requirement here. So one thing you can quickly notice here, because I use this existing for heading format, you notice that the color has changed. Because it's a lighter blue, it, it will violate the color contrast uh, part of WCAG, which means that because it's a lighter color on a lighter background, some people might find it hard to see it. So quick fix is to change it to black so that it becomes its own thing. You still don't like it, you can then go on to make it a bold, but notice it still becomes a heading. One quick way, a visual cue is how whether you can tell if something is a heading or not. A structure will be forming here. This structure will be used in the background if we are intending to create a table of contents for this document. So this is what your Word document is using to create that table of contents for you. So that's fixed, right? Here is an image of this beautiful cat. I just added it without any alt tag descriptions. Again, remember my note in the slide saying that um, the accessibility report that usually Word generates for you depends on the version of Word installed on your computer. At our college, our computers, our machines are in 2016 version of Word. So, it's almost 10 years ago. So accessibility standards were not that specific back then. So let me show you how to run an accessibility test, and then I will tell you obviously what's missing. So let's go to Review tab if you're following along with me. And then here you will see there is a Check Accessibility button. So here you will see that only one item is indicated as an error, when we clearly know that there are no headings here. And I will talk about the list here and the table here. Like I said, mine is a 2016 version of Word. That's why it's not showing a lot of content. But like I also said, we use Ally in our learning management system. So all the issues that this Word document has will actually be highlighted there as well. So that's why I never bugged never bugged enough people to update my Word document on this computer. But I found out that Microsoft 365 is another option for you. I wanted to give you that option as well. All right, so here is a cat that does not have an alternative text. So if you are new to this area of accessibility checker in Word, if you click on this, this is the part I love about Word, is that it will give you the reason to why you need to fix it and how you can fix it. And then if you want to read more about, accessible documents, they always provide more information for you. So to add a alt description to it, so wherever you see this little yellow or arrow, click on it, and then you have two decisions to make here. You can add a description, or if that image is not, it's just there for decorative purposes, you can just mark it as decorative. But here I would like to add a description. So I'm going to go ahead and add description and say um, a gray colored cat with, I don't know, yellow eyes. I cannot spell today. All right. And that's it for me. We would just say that. And once we close it, that issue will be gone, as you can see. As you can see, nowadays AI is making its way into everything. So sometimes you might see a generate description for me option. In my experience, what I have learned is just like with any AI, human intervention is always needed to ensure that it is accurate. So even if we generate a description, it might not be accurate. So we might have to step in and add or modify, but it at least gives you something to work with. So that's fixing some issues that are highlighted in the accessibility checker for you. But here clearly a description or a heading structure is missing here. If we want, we can mark it as heading level 2. And then here, this is the example I gave you about lists. So this is I actually intentionally converted this into a hand typed example for you to indicate how it could be a problem, right? So this is not a list that is pre-generated using these guys. In the paragraph area, you can list them as unordered lists, meaning bulleted lists, and then ordered lists. So this is not one of those. So to select that, we can just go and do this. That becomes a list that is now tagged as a list. So if a screen reader is going through it, it will read out loud that the student or whoever is using it are about to head a list, and list item number 1 is this, 2 is this, 3. So it goes on like that. So that's a quick fix I wanted to show you. And then again, if you want to keep it to heading level 2, you can make it heading level 2. It depends on the heading structure. Like for example, if it's the main heading, you can call it heading 1. But if it's it's a sub heading or a sub heading, then you can make decision as to the heading structures that your content will follow. And then tables, like I said, those usually present a big problem for us. So right now, I just created a manual table. So sometimes with tables, we can select the top table and it will sometimes give you the ability to do it. But my go-to is when you're in the creation process is that instead of using a manually created column and table selection, like you can go to here. So click on the table itself. And then if you select the table, you can get these table tools as one of the tabs for designing and layout. So if you go to these, again, you will have these pre-formatted table styles for you. You can use these and you can select any of these and make modifications later, of course. And then if you use these, then those will be previously labeled as what's a row header, what is a column header, so that if a screen reader is going through, the students can identify the data points within the table columns and rows by the headers that we assign. So that's something that is always important when we are considering table creation. So we just select the top row and then mark it as a header row if it's not already. So that's something that we always need to double check. It becomes a little bit difficult in PDFs when we are trying to remediate. But with Word, we can always go back and make more editing to the tables to make sure that headers are properly labeled and the data will be properly represented. So that's the table part. Again, I'm missing one heading here, so I could always make it a heading 2. And the descriptive links I told you about, right? So here, this is our usual practice for many number of reasons that we write, oh, click here, but then we will not know as a user who's on the receiving end of this information, what's behind that information. So I added a link to Unsplash, which is basically a free stock image downloading website, right? So instead of doing this, I could have always done like you could go to edit hyperlink and then the address is this, but instead of making it as click here, so you could make like free stock images through Unsplash. Okay. And then let's just click OK. So now it becomes a more descriptive link, so people know where they will go to when they click on that link. So here are some things that I thought I would show you really quickly. During the creation process, this would be considered one of your proactive strategies. So once you do this, you can always save as PDF. So it will turn into a PDF document for you. Which, because we already took care of all the accessibility issues, then the resulting PDF will also be a better accessible version of the document. So this is Word for us. And then the other topic was the PDF accessibility. So let's go back to our slides real quick here. And then let me stop share for a second. All right. Okay. So we are, that was the activity 2. If you have followed along with me, I hope you were able to, look at all the accessibility items that we were able to fix. And then let's talk really quickly about remediation strategies, right? So we have issues whenever we are looking at remediation. So what could be some of those issues? So scanned documents would be one of the bigger issues that we have. Inaccessible scanned documents usually create inaccessible PDFs, and then comes adding alternative text, adjusting color contrast, remediating tables to make sure that they have proper labels, adjusting tag structures, ensuring reading orders. So it goes on. So bunch of top issues are these listed here for us. So we can take a quick look at remediating a PDF, and I can share with you some of the tricks that I have learned while remediating some of these documents. So again, if you want to follow along with me, if you could go ahead and open this PDF of the PDF1 that we are going to use today. I know I'm confidently would not have enough time for PDF2. This is a 2-column PDF fixing that would usually involve the reading order. So that we'll have to get to some other time, but one row I can show you really quickly. This I like the most because this is like this. So usually when we run into scanned textbook PDF pages, this is what they look like if they are not already scanned using a PDF read or OCR, which is optical character recognition scanners. So let's go ahead and download this really quickly. And then I'll show you how to run it really quickly because I'm running out of time here. Okay. I would like you to see that as well. Okay. All right, so I have this document, right? I just downloaded it just like you all did, if you're following along with me. That your PDF, again, your Acrobat reader will already recognize that it's an image, and it will ask you to turn on recognition for text recognition. One thing that I would like to quickly bring your notice to here is, yes, your basic Adobe Acrobat reader might give you this error, but if you do not have a pro version, most of the steps that we are about to do next might not work because you need the pro version of Adobe to be able to run an accessibility checker and do remediation within. So here I'm going to say yes, and then it will tell me which ones, and then I'm going to say okay. So as you can see on the bottom here, it's running. So it is basically recognizing the text for us. And while it is doing it, I will talk about the accessibility checker available within Adobe as well. Just like Word, Microsoft has its own accessibility checker, so does Adobe. So it is not, yeah, now that the recognition is done, so you can actually highlight the words. That would be the difference between before OCR versus after. And then here I have accessibility as one of my shortcuts. If you do not see it here on your side panel, you can always click on more tools, and then you will find accessibility in the bottom here. So again, I will bring your attention to one more thing here is if you are not seeing this view on your own Adobe reader, that means that Adobe now has a newer version of Adobe Acrobat, which looks a little bit different. So all the buttons that you're seeing right now might not be in the same place that you're seeing as on my screen. I prefer the older version, so I reverted my changes to older version. That's why it looks like this. So again, I'm going to go ahead and open it. And then I'm going to say accessibility check for me. So, and then it will give you what I need to check. And I will keep everything as it is because all those need to be checked for accessibility purposes. So then click start checking. And then these are all the issues this document has. Again, this was a scanned document. That's why it would have so many issues because there would be a lot of mistakes with it. So before I run into all that, I would like to give you this one trick that I realized like last fall is that especially if you have this black or gray, this image that is basically the background of the scanner plate is if you actually make this into a regular size document and click on this, it will indicate that the outer part of this document is an image. And then you can actually delete this part so that it will delete that image layer and then only retain the content for you. So that's one thing that I learned that came in very handy for me. To do that, we would need to go to edit PDF, right? So, and if we highlight it, notice this blue outline around here with circles to, whenever you're editing and cropping an image, you'd have these bubbles on the corners to make it smaller or bigger. That's basically what it is. Because it's an image, it is giving you this crop, rotate image, add images, delete images. So what I figured is if I delete this whole process, see the entire gray thing will go away and you will only be left with the content. So this I found was time saving for me. I didn't have to, get distracted by all that grayness. So, and then you have the content, and then you can go ahead and make changes as you can see. Like if you want to make this text box bigger, to make it more like an actual, paragraph, then you can go ahead and do it. Again, you can notice that because this is a scanned image, you will notice that some of the words are misinterpreted because, sometimes the lighting is not good even in the scanner. So it will skip some words. So that's why human intervention, like we have to manually test these documents for readability. We were preparing this document for a user with a screen reader. So we had to be very, very thorough with the documents that we were going through. So um, I will stop here. I know I have a ton to talk about, but because we are running out of time, I will take questions now.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of great comments and a lot of sharing in the chat as well. So
Hmm.
it's been a great back channel. We did have
Awesome.
a couple of questions come in.
Okay. Yeah.
One was about the if you had any suggestions for audio description with the new DOJ
Hmm.
requirements coming down,
Hmm.
any places for resources or training, and there were some that were shared in the chat as well. But what are your thoughts
Uh-huh.
on that?
We have been looking more into audio descriptions as I am, as we are learning about audio descriptions along with closed captions and transcripts as well. Um, we don't, at our institution, we don't have any resource that we do. Sometimes if we need to, we manually enter um, things within, the content or within the document. We sometimes tell faculty members that if there is something on the screen, let's say some of their slides, and it needs to be described because it adds content to the content, we ask the faculty members to take a second to describe that during your recording of lectures, especially again, because most of these happen in online learning, right? So we ask the faculty member to take a second to describe because at this point we don't have any tool to intervene or overlay on top of an existing recording to add a description yet. So we request faculty to member to take that second to add that, if that helps. It's still manual. I don't have a technical answer, but that's the route that we are taking.
Yeah, and some folks shared some resources in the chat too,
Hmm.
but being somebody who works in media, I know
Hmm.
that's on everybody's mind.
Right now, yes.
Yep. Another question, and I'll bring this one up, even though trying to go in order, but
Hmm.
it relates to the
Hmm.
PDF that you're already sharing.
Hmm.
There was some wonder about is there any impact or what's the relationship with copyright laws as we start to edit PDFs for accessibility? What's that relationship look like?
So I am not a copyright expert at all. So whenever we have the same question, we usually run them by our librarians. And because this was an exception for us, because this student was visually impaired, and the publisher, we contacted the publisher, and they were not able to give us an accessible version of the textbook until 8 weeks into the semester. So we had no other choice but to do this. So that's the one thing that we warn our faculty members to, like, have you cleared the copyright for this? Because during COVID time, copyright was like, it's optional, but right now it's not. So are we are very careful when we are editing these, and because with us it's, is it ADA or is it copyright? Which one should we give importance to? And to us, giving an equal access document to the student was more important to us at that point, because she had to read these textbook chapters every week, and we couldn't wait for the publisher to respond. So yeah, we run usually by the librarian's recommendation on copyright.
Yeah, they're a great resource.
Mm-hmm.
Connected to that, actually, that's just segues perfectly into one of the other questions is
Mm-hmm.
how do you coordinate with publishers if they're already providing documents as like an accompaniment to a textbook or as the textbook itself? What does that workflow and that process look like?
Yeah, so when a student submits a accommodation request to we have a separate office, disability support services. When they receive a request that the students need accessible version of the textbook, the coordinator reaches out to the publisher, and the publisher sends the accessible version. Usually it's a Word document of the textbook. So even that sometimes need accessibility fixed, which then we will do it with permission from the publisher, because this student needs it. So that's the workflow that looks like. But it all starts with a student's request. We can't ask the publisher to give us an accessible version of the textbook ahead of time without a need.
That's that's great information to know
Hmm. Hmm.
that's the trigger.
Yeah.
And I'll make this the last question. So we had a question about when you make most of the corrections in Word and then save it as the
Hmm.
document as a PDF, do all of the changes transfer over seamlessly, or do you still encounter issues?
Um, I have to get a little technical with this, because when we are using the pre-formatted designs that Word has, it is creating a tag structure in the background. So if you are familiar with HTML, the web language, web programming language, everything in web has to do with tags. So when we say tags, those are it. So when heading 1 is identified as a heading 1 tag, so paragraph is identified as a paragraph tag. So once those are designated in Word and exported into PDF, those will stay. 99.99%. If there is something that is not going through, that means that something in the formatting did not go right in Word itself. If the initial formatting did not go well, like the tag did not make sense, or tag did not properly get attached to that specific line of text, then that might not always go over. And sometimes, like I said, the Word version that is installed on our computer it decides a lot of content creation that we do. If we have an older version, some of the newer standards might not always work because we are using an older version. We are not using an upgraded one. So let me share my screen here so that you can see my email in case you need to get in touch with me. I'm always happy to answer questions.
And while you're pulling
Yeah.
that up, I would just
Hmm.
remind folks, I've gotten a few messages in the back channel just saying
Hmm.
how useful this is and hoping that we can do a part two and that there are
Yeah.
more opportunities. I would remind folks that you're going to be joining us for the virtual conference, June 17th and
Yeah.
18th. And so in the chat, I added a link to that
Hmm.
registration along with a discount code if you're not already registered that you can use.
Hmm.
So we hope to have you share again, but we're also
Yeah.
looking forward to you sharing at the conference.
Yeah. Thank you. And I did propose a two-part about PDF access because it's such a huge topic. So we will see where this conversation leads, and I'd be happy to come back to do a just PDF accessibility checker that day. Not a lot about digital accessibility and proactive strategies. So, um, yeah, I am proposing that. So we will see where we go. And here is
That's
my email
wonderful.
if you'd like to get in touch with me. And thank you so much for joining today in learning about this important topic.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone. And we look forward to having you on join us on our next Free Friday webinar. Please check out our website and register for those. Thanks everybody for joining us.